Sporty Maller here. Sporty Maller time. And so there are a few things that are more enjoyable for someone that makes their living as a sports commentator than angst at the quarterback position. Okay, so nowhere in the NFL is there more angst in present times than in sweet home Chicago. And have you heard the latest out of the Windy City? I hope not. Maybe you've been busy doing other things that are maybe more important to you. Completely understandable. So let me give you the story in a nutshell of what's going on. So the Bears head coach, Matt Nagy, has publicly declared that Mitchell Trubisky, better known as Mitch, is not intimidated by the quarterback competition with Nick Foles. Nagy was speaking on television, state-run, state-sponsored NFL television, episode of the happy-go-lucky chatterbox show, Good Morning Football. The Bears coach said that Trubisky has, quote, taken this head-on, referring to the quarterback battle. He's accepted it. He understands it, the Bears coach said. He did point out that initially it's probably a shock, Nagy said, but then after that, it's like, let's go. All right. So let us discuss the question, do you believe the hyperbole of the Chicago Bears head coach there? It certainly implied that the Bears are fully invested in the Mitch Trubisky camp. Do you buy it or not buy it? Yeah, something doesn't smell right here. Something doesn't smell right. We do not buy this. So my observations, you've got the hokey pokey, the useful idiot, and McDonald's. And we will tie all these things together, and we'll have a good time with that. Now, number one. The orchestra's there. Whenever you need to say the number one, the orchestra will just pop up. So Mitch Trubisky is Mitch Trubisky's own worst enemy. Right? He seldom has been anything more than average. He is a generic brand quarterback, and it looks even worse when you juxtapose Mitch Trubisky and then you've got Patrick Mahomes and some of the other guys that were drafted in that draft class, and you're like, what the hell? The Bears traded up with Cleveland to draft Trubisky, and it's only occasionally that he'll work in a good game. And even when Trubisky has had a good game in his brief run as the Bears quarterback, he then does what? That's right. He follows it up with a couple of stink bombs, right? It's his hoedown, right? Take one step forward, shake it all about, and then take another step back. And actually, in this case, he takes two steps back. That's how Trubisky does. 2 steps back, and then you shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey. The Bears, I don't buy Nagy, the coach. I don't believe the front office. Now, there are some people that are in the Trubisky camp, but it sounds like you're taking both sides. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth when you talk about this. And while praising Mitchell Trubisky as a leader, right, that's celebrating him, they're also hedging their bets. That is what the Chicago Bears are doing. And it's not the wrong thing to do, but just admit it. Right? Well, I've been fighting this out. Call a spade, right? One of my mantras here. Well, in this case, you look at the Chicago Bears, and you're saying all these wonderful platitudes about Mitch Trubisky and how you love the guy and he's out there competing and all this stuff, just fawning praise at him, which is fine, but actions speak louder than words. The stronger battle cry coming out of Hallis Hall is that Mitch Trubisky is not the long-term answer. And there's very little evidence to say that he is the long-term answer. Now, what's my point? Let me back that up. So the Bears declined to exercise the fifth-year option on Trubisky. That came back in early May, so about a month ago. But Trubisky, he's also damaged goods. He suffered a left shoulder injury that required off-season surgery. That was back in January. Now, the second thing, so I want to circle back to Matt Nagy. Nagy, the Bears coach, claims that Nick Foles and Mitch Trubisky are going to have equal opportunity to win the starting job in Chicago in 2020 here when training camp opens up in late July. Now, that does not pass the test. It does not pass the test here, the eyeball test, because my theory is the Bears, what they're doing here is using Nick Foles as a prop. Nick Foles in this equation is a useful idiot, if you will, to prop up, use the word prop up Mitch Trubisky to make him look better by beating out Nick Foles. I would argue that as long as Trubisky's got a pulse and no fever, no coronavirus-like symptoms, he should walk out of training camp as the starting quarterback. Nick Foles is, at this point, a high-end backup who, as a starter, is a rinky-dink starting quarterback in the NFL. And I know Philly Rob is going to attack me for saying that, but that's the reality. And when you play Nick Foles longer and longer, the uglier and uglier he gets. He didn't play very much in Jacksonville. He got hurt. Bad luck. That's what happens. But Nick Foles is the old one-hit wonder. It was a great hit. He'll never have to pay for another meal in Philadelphia the rest of the man's life. He's Eagles royalty. And Fats in Philadelphia will light himself on fire and shout Nick Foles to celebrate Nick Foles. All right? But here's the thing. If you look at his performance outside of the Delaware Valley, Nick Foles should be trying to catch on as a backup quarterback for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers at this point in the old CFL. Foles, the glass slipper, shattered into 1,000 pieces in the old Cinderella story. And we mentioned the one-hit wonder thing, but the magic carriage turning back into a pumpkin at midnight. And it really is highlighted when you look at the numbers and compare and contrast what Foles has done in multiple other outposts in the landscape of the NFL as opposed to what he's done in Philly. So outside of the Delaware Valley, he has been a popper, right? Now, what's my evidence? Go to the stats. In Jacksonville, limited to 4 games because of injury. Kansas City, he had a tour of duty with the Chiefs. And with the old St. Louis Rams, 5-11 is his career record. Collectively, he started 16 games. So that's one season collectively spread out over 3 different teams. 13 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. And his yards per completion is less than 6.5. And his passer rating is below 77. And if you have a quarterback whose passer rating is below 77 and yards per attempt is 7's average, Foles is here. Average is here, and he's down here outside of Philly. Now, in Philly, the guy's been a winner. In Philly, he's got a bunch more touchdowns than interceptions, got a winning record. He's almost 7.5 yards per attempt, and his passer rating's over 93. The issue here, if the Bears really want to get the most out of Nick Foles, they've got to relocate to Broad Street is what they've got to do. They got to find real estate in Philadelphia. That's how that's going to go. All right, final point. So until Mitch Trubisky has sustained performance, I think we all know this, until he consistently performs well, and not just a game here and a game there sporadically and a couple of landmines poured in, the Bears have to weigh other options. It can be negligence if you lock in, and they've decided not to lock in with Mitch Trubisky as their quarterback, but you can't be the Pollyanna here. And as much as you want to be that and say, oh, everything's going to be all right, sunshine, rainbow, lollipops, that whole thing, reality smacks you in the face. Trubisky, if you were to compare him to an inanimate object, he is a human version of the soft serve machine at McDonald's. Now, back in my big fat days, I used to go to Mickey D's sometimes after a certain hour to get a soft serve vanilla cone because I love that. It's a great item. It's relatively cheap, and it's pretty delicious, especially during the summertime. So I'd go to McDonald's late at night to get one, and more times than not, the soft serve machine wasn't working. It didn't work very often, but when it did, man, it was really delicious. Kind of like Mitch Trubisky. He doesn't play very well very often, but when he does, it's like, wow, he's really good, but he's not that good because he doesn't do it all the time. So this is what's called a stopgap situation at Soldier Field, Chicago. The Bears will figure to be somewhere anywhere from 7-9 to 9-7. They're that kind of a team in Chicago. That's what they look like going into the new year, the new league year. And so the Bears will be back on the quarterback market. But if Chicago really wanted to put the pressure on Trubisky, they would have done better than Nick Foles. They could have gone out. But right now, Cam Newton's available. Now, I'm not a big Cam Newton guy, but his resume and his success, his body of work as a regular season quarterback is better than Nick Foles. Nick Foles, the one-hit wonder. Cam Newton's had multiple years where he's had very productive seasons in Carolina. Hell, Jameis Winston, in terms of age and all that, would have been more of a competition for Mitchell Trubisky. That's just the reality.